In this video, we're going to talk about basic URL routing in Coldbox. You can think of routing kind of like the URL rewrite feature in IIS or Apache. Coldbox has similar functionality baked inside to the framework itself. So here is a URL from the demo app we've been working on so far. You can see I'm just going to the users.list event like we've seen in previous examples. I'll just refresh the page. You can see it's the exact same functionality we've looked at earlier. Here I have that exact same page in the browser, and I'll refresh this browser tab just so you can see that there's no trickery going on here. The only difference is the URL itself. Here in the first one, we're going to !event equals users.list. And in this second browser tab, we're using the search engine safe feature in Coldbox. So I don't have to do the !event equals piece. I can just say /users/list. And Coldbox is smart enough to pick that up, and it knows that users is the name of the CFC, and list is the name of the method inside that CFC that we're going to use as our handler. Let's take a look at the code just to give a refresher of what we've got here. Here's our user CFC, and there's our list method. It's just going out to the model folder, getting our list of users, and handing it back to the view, the same stuff that we saw earlier. Here's a third browser window, and you can see this one goes to /people. And I'm going to refresh that browser tab. You can see it's the exact same data happening here. So at first glance, you might think, oh, well, we must have a people component in our application. And instead of explicitly saying call the list method, we have some sort of default method defined inside our people handler. Let's take a look at our handlers folder. And you can see all we have is the main CFC and the users CFC from the previous examples. There's no people component in here anywhere. Here inside our users component, you can see there's no people function anywhere in here either. Nor is there one in the main CFC. Scroll through that, you can see that's the exact same file that we've looked at in previous examples. So where is this /people URL coming from? It's coming from the Coldbox router functionality. Here in our config folder, we have that Coldbox CFC that we looked at earlier where you can set your application settings and control differences in your production and development environments. There's also this router CFC file in here. And up until now, we haven't looked at this. You can scroll down here to the bottom of our router CFC, and you can see I have this one line in here, line 33. It says route/people to handler users.list. What that's doing is it says anytime someone goes to the URL /people in our application, that is going to map up with the users.list event handler, just like when you actually go to !event equals users.list, like we saw in our first browser tab over here. I can also go to the search engine friendly version of that URL. And now I have this third option that I plugged in here into my router CFC file. Anytime someone goes to /people, it will also pull up that users.list event and run it. And that's a basic way you can do URL routing in Coldbox. You can think of this file as the same thing as IIS rewrite rules, if you're familiar with that, or Apache has the module for doing URL rewriting in Apache. This file works the same way. The routes start at the top and they go down from there. So any route rewrites that you have written physically higher in the file will run first before anything lower in the file. Let's take a look at a couple of other examples and see some features you can take advantage of with this router CFC. Let's take a look at some of the other code in this router CFC file. Earlier we looked at /people and saw that is a way to go straight to a particular event handler. The first one we've got on our file is a /healthcheck. And notice how that one doesn't actually point to an event handler like our earlier example did. This one's got a closure as that second argument. So anytime someone goes to /healthcheck, instead of pointing to a handler, it's going to actually run the code inside this function. Just like the code we saw in our earlier videos dealing with the event object RC and PRC scopes, notice that those three things get passed into this function closure just the same way as they would any other event handler. Except instead of calling an actual event handler and including a view, I simply have this return statement in here. Let's find out what happens. I'm going to go to pull up /healthcheck, copy that, go to my browser, and we'll just paste that in. And you can see that it gets the statement OK drawn on the screen. That's the text here from our return statement. So this is a really easy way to quickly build out sort of stub placeholders for maybe future URLs you're going to have in your system. Maybe instead of /healthcheck, you might have something like a new promo coming up later this year, promo 2020. And if it's not quite ready for used by the general public yet, you could add something in here like coming soon. And then instead of taking the time to build out an event handler in your component, build it on a view file for a simple message like coming soon, you can simply put it here in a route. I'm going to copy that, go to my browser, load that up, and see if it works. Oh, something went wrong. Promo 2020 is not a registered event. Here's one thing you need to know about your Coldbox router CFC file. Anytime you change that file, you've got to reinitialize it. Do Coldbox reinit from your command box prompt. Now let's go back to the browser and run that, and we should see that Promo 2020 message now points to coming soon. There's no limit to how many sort of API style routes you can have here in your router CFC. One thing you should keep in mind though is, much like I mentioned earlier, just like IIS rules, they run from the top down. And whenever the first match is found, that's the one that runs. So here I've got two routes, both going to Promo 2020. The first one I'll leave the same as we had it before, coming soon. And the second message, I'll make it say something different, coming soon in 2020. Save. Let's go back to our command box prompt and reload. Now let's go back to the browser. And we have our two examples here in the code, coming soon and coming soon in 2020. Let's see which one of those actually shows up. Refresh. Notice how we got coming soon on the screen, but that coming soon in 2020 message never actually ran. The reason for that is, just like with IIS rules, we found a match. No other matches physically lower in the file are going to be executed. If I flip the order of these two things, take route and put it above this route. Let's take that, go back here, reinitialize Coldbox, go back to my browser. Now you'll see we get the coming soon in 2020 message, but we don't get the earlier message that just says coming soon. So that's how our direct responses work in the route. So I can just go to a route and return a hard-coded block of text. You don't have to do that. If I had some reason I needed to put, say, a for loop in here, I could actually write more code and this route will run just like any other function in your application. I generally don't see a whole lot of that in Coldbox apps. Usually if I have to build out something a little more complex than simply returning a plain block of text or a default response, then I might go to the trouble of building out an actual event handler and fleshing out the code in that part of my application. But another thing you can do is build out simple API style responses. You can see here I have a route that goes to API/echo, and instead of returning just hard-coded text, I'm actually going to return a small struct with some data in it. A little error message, status field letting us know if this was, a successful return type, or if we got an error back from our API, and then a little bit of a message about what happened in our system. I can take that data, serialize it, and then simply return that back. Let's see what happens when I go to /API/echo. Go here, and you can see we get that data back in JSON format. Really easy way to build small JSON style APIs right here in your router CFC. You can have your data returned back that way as well. I could have done the same thing here in either one of our Promo 2020 responses. If I wanted to return a JSON style message saying this is coming soon, maybe Promo 2020 is a URL that our API deals with, or that talks to an Angular or Vue.js mobile app, and you want to return JSON back from that. I could have done this exact same serialize style syntax up here and returned to JSON instead of the plain hard-coded string. They both would have worked. There are several other methods you can use in your router CFC depending on what type of response you're going for. Maybe I don't want this /people URL to stick around in the browser when people go to that URL in the system. People. You can see right now, my URL in the browser stays /people. I might want to do a redirect where if people type in /people, it does automatically forward them over to the actual users.list URL. I can do that by, instead of using something like toHandler, I can say toRedirect. And then it will forward me off to that actual URL. There are several other methods that do similar style functionality in your router CFC. You can use toView to grab a particular view and include that in your application. If I want to get a particular response from something, toResponse. And then I pass in the same sort of function that we had here. Instead of the hard-coded list, run a chunk of code that way. All of this is defined in the basic documentation section under coldbox.ortusbooks.com. I can show you that here. You simply go to coldbox.ortusbooks.com/thebasics/routing. And here you can see an example router CFC with several variations of the different functions you can use in your router CFC. Again, none of these are required. They're all optional things you can do if you can find a reason to take advantage of this feature in your application. Go ahead and plug something in. When we did that coldbox create app command earlier in this video series, it created this router CFC file for us as part of that initial creation of our coldbox application. And these routes down here at the bottom, and a couple of earlier ones that I've actually modified since our promo 2020 and such, this API echo and the route one here, those both come automatically for you when you create an application by doing coldbox create app. So you don't even have to start with a blank router CFC file. It comes with the things that power your coldbox app. This default route here at the bottom, this is actually the thing that makes your coldbox engine itself be able to pick up the handler/action style URLs like we saw right here. Our search engine friendly URLs, handler/action, is being picked up by that line of code right there in your router CFC file. So you can see, even though we didn't create this file, it was created for us automatically. Coldbox came with search engine safe URLs turned on automatically for you as well. So I get this nice style, real clean SEO friendly URL syntax in my app without even having to do anything. That comes straight for you as an automatic feature that's enabled from your router CFC. It does the exact same thing under the hood as your event URL or any other custom URLs you add into the router CFC. This and this both do the exact same work. These are just nicer URLs. They're a little bit shorter, a little cleaner to look at, less typing. And of course, if you're building public-facing websites, the search engine-friendly URLs give you a little bit of an SEO boost and have, performance benefits in that sort of situation if you're trying to deal with getting better rankings on Google and that sort of thing. And all of that functionality comes for you basically free just by having that router CFC file in your application. You don't even have to do anything to get this feature working. It just happens out of the box.